This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. I saw a really thought-provoking kind of video come up from Guitar World with Walter Trout, like blues legend, and they were doing this kind of series around the pedal apocalypse, like this idea, like if it was kind of whittled down, what is the bare bones that you could gig with? And Walter Trout was kind of an interesting choice for this because, as he points out, all he uses and has done for about 30 years, I think, it is a Mesa Boogie Mark 4 on channel 3 with the gain all the way up, and that to me sounds pretty aggressive. And then he uses his volume knob on a Strat most of the time by the look of things, to get kind of clean up a bit, or open it up all the way for his kind of screaming kind of lead tone. Now that kind of is interesting to me, and one of the things that he said was, if you've got a really good amp, why would you put $100 pedal in front of it? And I guess that's kind of a somewhat old school kind of view, right? But definitely a valid view. And I wanted to think about, like, is there a way that I could get by gigging like that? And understanding, of course, that the blues gig is kind of a different thing in a lot of ways to like a typical session gig, right? Or a typical function gig. So on my wedding gigs, I'm playing like disco stuff, I'm playing rock stuff, I'm playing whatever, like it's across a bunch of genres. And as well, you definitely have like some songs where you need like a really chunky kind of rhythm tone, some songs where you need to be absolutely pretty much clean, right? And then some songs when you're taking a solo, and if you've got keyboard players and stuff like that and vocalists, maybe you even need to be like boosted a level above where you were. Because obviously, like playing your standard rhythm guitar parts, you don't want to be as loud as when you're taking a solo, right? So I was thinking about this. So the Mesa Boogie Mark IV came out, I think, the end of the 80s, the 90s. He called that a vintage Mesa Boogie, which, if that is the case, I'm now vintage. So is a late 80s, early 90s amp vintage? Possibly. Which is crazy to think of. Anyway, so no pedals, just channel 3. And I don't think Mesa Boogie amps actually clean up all that well. So that's another interesting one, because before that I used to use a Fender Super Reverb. A Mesa kind of builds on the Bassman kind of principle, and then it kind of cascades gain stages from there. And what I've found personally is that it doesn't necessarily clean up hugely well. I used to use a Mesa Boogie Nomad 45 with no pedals, as far as I remember, kind of through uni. I had, and that has 3 channels. It has a clean, it has a rhythm, or you know, a dirt channel, and then another dirt channel. I used to kind of use that just with the foot switch, but that's, you know, one level beyond even what Walter's doing. The downside that I've found of using a channel switching amp is that if you then start to integrate pedals, is that it then does get quickly more complicated. So, you know, for instance, because you're switching between a clean and a drive, you're going to have to either have different delay pedals for that, because in a drive-driven channel, it's going to sound way different to in front of your clean. Or you start to incorporate an effects loop, which effects loops, again, vary, and a lot of people kind of don't dig the sound of an effects loop and all of that sort of stuff. And then that's 2 extra cables as well, and, you know, using an effects loop live can be problematic. I think Andy Timmons as well stopped using the drive channels on his Mesa amps for, remembered that well, haven't I? Was it something that the effects loops go out, in which case he has to go into the front of the amp, and then essentially he can't use the drive channel? So I think he's gone all the way to using pedal drives, and I don't think he sounds any worse for it. Yeah, so I thought it was an interesting point of view, and trying to think about what you would need to actually get through a gig. I think I need a clean. I think I need a rhythm. Maybe you could go between clean and rhythm with a volume knob, but what if you then need to get that volume boost for your solo? Can you get that all from the volume knob on your guitar? For me personally, I don't think so. So I've kind of got the gain sort of pretty cranked. And that could do like a serviceable clean, probably, right? I kind of got it like a little bit above, maybe below gigging volume. So that's with the volume knob on the guitar about like 5. If I get up to 6. Up to about 8. Up to 9. So for me, in the function bands, what I have to do is kind of have like more of a kind of disco. get there at like kind of 4 or 5 just about. I also need like a chunky. Alright, and I also need like a solo tone. You know, if you're playing solos as well. I just don't think. So I just thought it was an interesting one. Let me know if you're someone who has managed to do that kind of thing of actually gigging with just your volume knob kind of giving you all those shades of gain. As I say, a blues gig, quite different to your normal function gig, and kind of suits that as an approach, right? Where it's like there's a lot of space kind of in a lot of blues kind of ballad playing, where it's like, well, there's no guitar for this part at all, and when there is, I'm going to swell it in. Okay, and then, you know, in terms of the supporting parts, there's an organ player, there's a bass. Possibly you don't really even need to be playing guitar for a chunk of it. Then you bring it in, there's fills in between the vocal lines, and then when it's really time to solo, you start to crank that thing. I think it's a beautiful approach, it's really minimal, I love it, but I don't think it would work for the average kind of session, the average kind of function gig. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Cheers.